Welcome to One Interview by Night, where we interview the people who make the One World by Night LARP network happen. Tonight, we're interviewing Marcus. Marcus, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcus Glozak, and I am the 2022 to 2024 Brujah Coordinator for One World by Night.
Great. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your history in the org?
Well, so I'm 37. I've been in One World by Night for 21 years. My parents signed a waiver when I was 15 for me to LARP in Decatur, Sabat, way back in the when I was in high school. I did 10 years in the Army almost and been out for almost a decade, basically getting all my medical stuff taken care of with the VA. And now I'm wrapping up my bachelor's degree in business management marketing from Texas A&M.
Awesome. So the next up is describe what you're doing as Brujah Coordinator.
So the big thing I'm doing as the Brujah Coordinator is I stepped up as the interim coord back in January, right after the 2022 Blood and Ice. I've been a member of Team Brujah for about 1.5 years, 2 years now, before becoming interim. And the big thing has been basically finding out what hasn't really been used in the Brujah genre, what's been forgotten, what hasn't really been integrated, and if there's been any real disconnect from all the books that there are where Brujah have been involved to how that's translated to how OWbN has implemented it and used it, and if there's anything that has basically needed to be fixed or could possibly be an issue, getting that in line, and then looking at, okay, what's really been going on with the Brujah, and when was the last time we really did a whole lot with the Brujah? Be that on the out of character side with interactions with Chronicles, to in character with basically interaction with the Camarilla side, and the Sabat side. So it's been a really big juggling and fixing the back end first, which has been my priority for the most so far, on getting everything fixed on the back end and getting bylaws adjusted and a few other things adjusted to make it easier for players and also making it easier for the bookkeeping.
So to bring up what you mentioned, what are the things that you're bringing up for the Cam side and the Sabat side, and I'm assuming Anarch as well?
So on the Cam side, first off, overall, the big thing right now is there is an alternate form of temporis that we are going to regulate. Right now, the big issue has been trying to figure out if we make it true Brujah only as an optional, as a notify for them, or make it so that way it's true Brujah only, or if we make it that court approval. And also from there is a lot of bloat when it comes to the custom content. And that when I say that a lot of the bloat is because the fact of in tabletop and a lot of the powers between temporis and celerity, there are similarities between how some of them could in fact be used, but it's also addressing one of the new mechanics that came out with V20, which is true celerity, which is Brujah only, which allows a Brujah to have both. So one of the things that we're currently discussing and going through and looking at is making the merit true celerity when we look at redoing the Brujah packet, which we're going to start after I graduate, adding that as a Brujah court approval only. But what that does is that will allow a list. If you have temporis in your Brujah, you can buy these celerity powers or use these celerity powers with your temporis, or if you have celerity, you can use these temporis powers with your celerity. That way it's not, and then with that, I can use that to hopefully be able to remove some of that, because what that'll do is that'll fix a lot of the issues that have happened with the need of players to create custom content as a stopgap. Because I'll be honest, there's some really good ones out there, and some of them we're looking at adding to the Brujah packet.
Oh, that's
and we
great.
will like, and not only that, we will be like, yes, and we are this as 100% player created stuff that we are adding to this. So
yeah, I know
that's
there's a lot of those temporis custom combos that are replicating celerity combos, and I understand why.
Yep.
And I also get frustrated because apparently none of those have crossed over into the Sabat, so I can't
right.
get any. So I can't, as a Brujah player who has temporis, can't get any of them.
And again, that's another issue we're noticing. It's also,
though there are some great custom content ones that I know a Sabat Brujah has made that hasn't left the Sabat. But exactly. Those do not, those are all completely unique. Those do not replicate celerity combos. They're
exactly
really cool.
And that's the big thing is like the way we have to look at it, and this is me coming from 10 years in the Army as a leader in the military, dealing with things on an operational level, dealing with things on the civilian side in a trauma hospital, and then now getting the degree to back it. There's a lot of little nuances we have to pay attention to when it comes to custom content and doing things like that. And that is, while this is a good idea, what is short term, being within a year, and long term overall? So we're talking, when I say long term, I'm talking 5, maybe 10 years down the road, which I'm hoping OWbN survives and continues.
I mean, I'm marketing coordinator. That's part of my job.
Well, and that's, as a coordinator, exactly. That's all I can hope for, is everything I do will, make people want to play and get their friends back involved. And what I'm looking at is, will this create something that will better, not just in character, but out of character? So there's a lot of little things we're looking at, like the back end side before we go into the cam side, the anarch side, and the Sabbat side. So another big thing we're looking at is, because we fixed a few loopholes, specifically with a few of the by night books, like Chicago by Night. There was an NPC named Yargon, who is a 6th gen, also previously known as Little Bear, who basically no real write-up, but had his own custom bloodline discipline called Telerian, that basically said it gave him power over the spirit world that he called the Umbra. And I'm like, there's physically no for this.
Nope.
But so it was getting that stuff regulated. The big thing was, as interim, was getting everything ready, so that way once after elections, after hey, the great spirit of transitions and everything, okay, now we start doing the props, which is deregulations on a few things, such as like Aura of a Cursed Rage, which is one of those things that it's not a Brujah thing, but it's one of those things of it's like when you read the write-up for it, okay, that's a Brujah Gangrel thing. So me and Paul talked, the Gangrel Gorg, and we're like, we're going to make that notified. There's literally no reason for it to be my approval. And it's basically so that way we have an idea of who's using it. And then deregulated like a Spirit Eater Core, so that way it's, if you're a Brujah, you can just learn it. Like if you're a Brujah, like outside Jackhammer Punch, there's really not a whole lot that you should not be able to have available. Also, like there's a few things where we're like, okay, this also makes more sense, like really just keeping it to the approval of, if you're not a Brujah, all right, what's the story behind it, right? Like that's the key point of it, is it's not just a, hey, I'm trading Paul this power just because, well, we have 4 years of role play together, and he saved my life, we're part of the same coterie and stuff like that. Like, yeah, well, you're good to go. And stuff like that. Like that's a big component of it, is basically making sure that people understand when they approach the office that we're doing this for story purposes. We're not doing this just to be I want change. We're doing this my way. There should be a progression and understanding of moving the genre forward. And that's been the biggest hurdle when it comes to a lot of it, and trying to make sure that everything's done in accordance to a plan of action that, me and the team set up. So it's really interesting. It's going to be really cool. And it's going to be really interesting going into next year, trying to get the packet done. But so now that we have that been done, on the Camarilla side, the big thing has been getting the Justicar's office, Justicar Manuela Cardoso, and Chief Archon Valeria, more active and involved, and getting them active, and getting the PC Archons involved, and reaching out to games and going, hey, you guys have this game. Is it okay if I hold an improv, a Brujah meeting and have like the Chief Archon or Manuela show up, or Christoph Rumald, or an NPC, and just getting the interactions up, because the Camarilla is supposed to be the political side of the house, and it shouldn't be monster of the week, but it's supposed to be that the politics between the clans and the networking. So working on that. And the big push right now has been a canon NPC that's never been used, Moussier, Alexander Moussier from the Princess Primer, who is no longer Prince of Jerusalem, since we had the Jerusalem game, who went cam, flipped Sabbat, and then went back to cam and Sabbat, and then went basically folded. So he's been basically the big NPC I'm pushing as the candidate for the Harridan. And also we have, because of my school schedule, we wanted to do a national rant this fall. It's going to be a soft RP. It's, if you want to send a sheet, you can, but it's basically one of those, this way it doesn't interfere with anyone's game stuff. That's going to be the 2nd through the 5th. That way it doesn't really, 1st through the 5th, that way it doesn't interfere, but it's going to be considered held pre-Dubai, which is something that Asimite Core is hosting. So there's that, and then we have on. So it's really cool because right now it's just been basically getting the office interactive, getting everything involved, getting the archons involved, and just communication and stuff that hasn't really, been something that's been a whole lot other than status quo for the office for the last several years. So it's interesting catching up on a lot of the emails and stuff like that. And I'm lucky to have Emily and Susan and Michael, Diogo, Dennis, and a bunch of others, as part of Team Brujah, just really working, because I have a 4-man Brazilian team who is all about, like, each one has a different specialty, and like most of them have been with the office. Like Diogo set aside his longstanding Anarch Brujah to come help Mary in the Anarch Cord, and to work with me. So him and me have like this really cool thing we're going to be working on for the overarching Brujah plot. So yeah, the big thing with the Camarilla is, what's been going on, getting the office more active, looking at bringing the Council of Scales into play, but because it's a multi-clan thing, it's not just a Brujah thing, it's a Critias thing. It's Critias's like love project for like the last 500 years. So I got the Tremere Cord who's interested in being involved, the Ventrue Cord, the Gangrel Cord, the Nosferatu Cord, and then Mike likes it because the entire point of it is the Council of Scales is not there to be politics. They're not there to gain status. They're not there to gain boons. They're literally there. They're just masters of understanding the traditions and the edicts that have happened between princes, justicars, blood hunts, and edicts, and basically giving an interpretation of it to princes, while you have something, their partner, which is the Myrmidon, which is a Camarilla position that was supposed to be a leg and arm of the Primogen Council that's not been used in Obi-Wan in any of the games, and using them in conjunction with the jurist, which is basically the guy, effectively the Mentat from Dune, the guy who's basically an Encyclopedia Britannica on Camarilla law, right? And then his entire job on the Myrmidon is literally there to be the leg breaker. His entire job is to be the investigator. And the key component about this is they have no power unless the Prince and the Primogen Council, Seneschal and Harpy, ask him to go, hey, here's the scandal. This we think violates the traditions. Is there any references to something like this happening before? Or, hey, we don't know. We want an independent investigator. Can you go look into this? Because we think it's scandal and could possibly violate the traditions. So they get the Myrmidon. And they work together. It's a pair, right? It's the jurist and the Myrmidon, and they work hand in hand. So that's one of the ideas that we're looking at pushing into phase 2 of the overarching Camarilla Brujah plot. So phase 1 is a lot of interaction, and it's going to be really interesting. So that I'm happy to talk about, because the Council of Scales, I think, like a lot of people are, it's basically using the jurist, who's basically a Mentat, basically a master of the legal nuances of the Camarilla. Their entire job is to basically be the person that can go like, oh, hey, why was this, this person was blood hunted because they did X, Y, and Z violating the traditions. And then they can go, well, that person was, but it was found out that there was a whole scandal that's about the prince who did it because he actually wanted him removed because he refused to give him a major boon for like something, Prince owed him Brood made a life boon over because he was wanting to get out of it. Oh, okay. Stuff like that, because that stuff has happened in Obi-Wan. Yeah. So it's their entire job is to handle it. And while the Hague on the Clan Ventrue is somewhat like that, they don't leave the Hague. They don't. And they haven't really been open to having visitors. So, and that's in their description. So basically what this does is this gives games, Camarilla games, a tool, if their princes in character allow it, for them to have. It's a multiplier of the genre. Their entire goal is to basically be a mentor, effectively. So it's really cool. And then you have those who are, if you're more physical and want to throw chops and deal with the violent section of it and doing the investigations, that's what the Myrmidon's for. So it's one of those things that it's really cool to see. And the fact that it is something that's open to several clans and it's open to all clans, it's really cool, because the big thing is basically making it so that way the Brujah, the Tremere, the Gangrel, and the Ventrue have an elder that's involved in it, that basically like that way it's not just one person being able in charge of having to handle everything. It's, you know, any one of us can respond. That way each one of us can give a different perspective from our clan's view, like this elder's view onto the traditions and stuff that they've seen. On the Anarch side, the big thing that we're looking at is addressing everything that's happened with the neocards and everything like that, and looking at giving the Anarch, because they're supposed to be the largest body of Brujah, something that makes them Brujah. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then really we're working out a lot of details on that. And the biggest proponent we're looking at that is we're basically going to make a lot of the Brujah question if this is bad, because we have so many societies and groups now who just interact with mortals, and because how the dynamic shift has happened, where the masquerade really doesn't mean what it used to, like 10 years ago, because of the fact of, in cam games, Anarch games, Sabbat games, everyone's interacting with werewolves, mages, hunters, angels, demons, changelings, fae, wraiths, and normal everyday humans who are like hedge mages and sorcerers, like, or psychics. Because this breadth of it, like, at what point the neocards basically want to live with the humans that they choose, where's the line?
Right.
So that's something we're readdressing, and we're looking at addressing as well, because the fact of in 2017 or something, the Camarilla declared the neocards enemies.
So this is something I have no idea about, so I'm fascinated listening, because I only play Sabbat, so.
Which is funny because I started with Sabbat and I hated Camarilla, and now like I know more about Camarilla while I played in Anarch and than I do about my favorite clan, which is Gangrel, and I play Sabbat because how much has been done over the years. But yeah, and then on the Sabbat side, it is, you know, while a lot of people, like, there's a small group of people that are angry that yes, I took the NPC that was made, NPC Justicar, that is not canon, named Misako, Sabbat, is because, you know, for 20 years, she's never been interactive. Once Pashik became Justicar, everyone ignored her. They pushed her to the side. And the big difference is, what a lot of people don't know, is that she was in love with Madame Guy, the Malkavian Justicar. And the fact that they both had true love. And then in character wise, you know, game starting and a bunch of other stuff. So a lot of the edicts that are, you know, this is what a lot of people are upset about. They're like, but she made these edicts. Well, a lot of the edicts, when you go and look at it, were stuff that was in the Camarilla Guide, you know, the Archons and Templar book, and then the Princess Primers and stuff like that. It was stuff that she was just repeating what those rules were to be a prince and be a member of the Camarilla. And the big thing was basically how you can't be a member of two sects, that which was the big edict that a lot of people were like, oh, this, she made a treaty. Well, actually, you know, this is something me and Ken were talking about that we're actually looking at integrating into this overarching Brujah plot, because I'm doing it kind of like how the MCU is in phases. So that way phase 1's this, phase 2's this. So that way each phase basically lasts like 3 to 4 months. Some of them may be quicker, etc. That way it's not just a bam, 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 like one giant thing that gets lost in translation. So, and the big thing we're looking at is the fact that it was an edict basically saying, this area of LA is theirs. This area, like these specific areas, are the Kwaijins of this, the Quinquan or Quinque, I can't remember how to pronounce it. We cannot hold, they cannot hold status in the Camarilla. We can't hold status in their court, etc., etc. That's because that's been a thing of the Camarilla. So, and that's also the time when they released the Laws of the East book, so which allowed you to play Hingokai, and that was becoming a lot, and because of how the mechanics were in that, changed a lot of how people were viewing things, especially when you look at it, we're dealing with Gray Book Vampire, which, you know, Tremere had a ritual that allowed you to become a werewolf and get werewolf traits. Like, you know, there's a lot of little things that people are not thinking about when they're realizing the reason why these were things.
Right.
So,
but I mean, the other thing is, like, this was an agreement. I mean, say she hadn't defected and she'd been killed, no one would be bringing up the same thing.
Exactly.
Because they'd be like, oh, no, she died, but the edicts still remain. Like, of course they do.
Yeah. But even then,
that's how diplomacy works. Yeah, treaties don't go away because someone dies or someone leaves.
Which which is also understandable. Which, yeah, okay, yeah, that is one thing, because it's basically Nedic saying we can't cross these streams out of character and in character. Okay, yes, for that I will 100% say, okay, realizing that after talking with Ken and them, yeah, okay, I can see where, while, you know, it's only because she's non-canon, technically nothing she did, like, done by the office was considered, with her, was considered, you know, genre changing. You know, it's I will say, okay, yes, I can see why this could have gone to council. 100%. That's on me. That's on as a court. I should have taken the, okay, there's a possibility where this can be construed at that. I should have just done that. 100%. That's on me.
No, I totally get how some people are upset that it didn't go to council. The actual decision, though, I think, keep in mind, I had no idea who she was. I have not been playing in the org that long, comparatively, but seeing the people who have been, because in particular there is one Brujah in the Sabbat who is a convert. He defected, and he got so excited when he saw her defect, and that was amazing. It's actually my character sire. But
and which is funny, the player is a long-standing friend of mine, and he immediately blew up my phone. He goes, Marcus, what is this? Oh my god. Well, so, but that's just it, right? Like, NPCs have story. Players are the key component. Your interaction, your actions drive how the story goes. NPCs are a mechanic of that story. NPCs have their own story. They are not stagnant things. So with this, the key component we're looking at is the brutes, aka the Brujah Ante, for those of you guys that don't know, have not really ever had a lot of story. They've actually never really gotten story. It's the same with the gangrel Ante.
Yeah, like, we've kind of been like on the edges of things. Things that have happened that affected the clan obviously affect the Sabbat, but we haven't been like included in those plots. They've just happened to us.
Well, and it's, yeah, exactly. And like there's several major things when it comes to the brutes, the Brujah Ante. And that's when you read the clan book and you look at a lot of the stuff. Camarilla Brujah that aren't like Primogen or Princes, or usually, and especially on the Anarch, be like, hey, like, why are you guys in the Sabbat? And they'll just go hang out with them, and they'll be like, yeah, man, because this, and this. Like, we ain't got somebody fucking doing what that prince does. Like, we're free to do our own shit, and the only rule we got is don't do dumb shit and don't get caught. Like, so, and it's and the key component is, in the book, it talks about how, like, the Sabbat has given the Brujah Ante an actual purpose and driven them to become more united,
right,
comparatively to where you have.
And I guess, I mean, we are. And like they basically say Brujah are some of the biggest zealots in the Sabbat. See my character being Black Hand, which are the biggest zealots in the entire Sabbat.
Right, you know? Which is funny because I played a Cam Brujah, so whose sire went Sabbat, who my PC sire went Sabbat. So I get it. But yeah, no, it's, and the big thing with that is the fact that, like, a lot of the stuff that I'm looking at doing, which is why I actually have to reach back out to Jamie Nobles, who's a dear friend of mine, because he's one of a bunch of players who have been working on a project for several years, and that I'm looking at. That's a big part of the Brujah stuff and the Brujah plot and the Brujah Ante plot. But the problem I've run into is I technically don't control any of this Sabbat Brujah NPCs. But I'm lucky I have Matt. I've known Matt for years. Me and Matt have worked really well together. And we've been talking a lot. And with me with Misako going Sabbat, that gives someone that the brutes can also rally behind, because the fact that she's a convert, the fact that she is now initiated and is working with the Cardinal Anka, working with Dark Selena, and the fact that, like, a lot of people get hung up on the, well, Japanese culture, you know, this, and they forget that, like, the mentality of a Ronin and to walk away is in fact there, even in Japanese culture, of at what point, when everything you've had is destroyed by those who, you know, basically are supposed to be subservient and following the rules, don't, like, at what point have you had enough? And that's the big push for it.
I mean, like, watch Kurosawa movies.
Exactly.
That'll tell you.
And that's exactly it.
But the convert thing is also big, because the brutes in particular, there are more brute converts than any other converts in the Sabbat.
Yep.
I mean, it's a huge.
It's about 40%.
It's a lot. My character was embracing the Sabbat, but her sire's a convert. A lot of the other brutes she knows are convert. Yeah, and it's a PC sire. It's great. But yeah, a lot of converts.
So yeah, so the big thing with that is developing that. And the big thing with the Brujah plot for the Brujah anti side is basically giving them something that's basically a clan structure that's not a society or a faction. It's basically a Brujah resource.
Yeah.
And one of the big things I'm doing across the board is because how bad a call to arms has actually been to use in One World by Night is we're also looking at, and the big thing right now is working out the mechanics of it, is to turning it into a background. So that way, that gives Brujah a resource within game of basically on their sheet to use as a resource for say, hey, I'm going to do this, call to arms local to get the local guys, which would be the background that you would have. Right. So that would be considered, your background of resources. Or if you're at an event game, it'd be a pooled resource for all the Brujah, and that'll be universal. So the big thing is each section in the phase will be individual, so it won't really cross over, except on one. So up until about phase 3. So we're looking at phase 1 is basically a lot of reaching out to PCs and getting interactions and getting STs in the plot kit, because right now we have 99%, about 90% of the rough outline done. I just gotta finish up now that we have a lot of the thanks to reaching out to former chords, we actually have a lot of the Neocarth information, so that way we can actually use that to wrap up the Anarch side and start getting an idea of what we want to do with that. Phase 1 is reaching out, starting to get that, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing the Cam Anarch / independent rant. And then we're doing the big great thing is we're doing with Coney hosting it. So that way, Adam could play and everyone else can, is I'm running it. It's gonna be my event. And it's gonna be basically a soft RP event, is with several of my staff and or 1 or 2 other volunteers, is basically going to be a plot seed to get the ball rolling for it. Because it's one of those things of, I don't want to release something until I am comfortable with an outline refined and broken down, and then plot kits for the ST level plot kit for each section, explaining details, minimum and maximum, and what the effect will that be later on for possibilities, because it gives a window for what the minimum and maximum is. And the big thing we have to remember is this is the world of darkness. The key thing is on the Camarilla side, it should be subtle, it should be politics. The Sabbat side should be, let's be honest, the cult mentality, how it affects it, and what is, how does it affect how you've drank the Kool-Aid? Yeah. And the Anarchs.
I gotta say, I love that you're doing an event for the Sabbat Brujah, because we hadn't really had any of those.
2011.
Rants and raves aren't really a thing that we do a whole lot, even PC led. I think the last PC led one was 4 years ago. It had to be about that, because I had just started playing.
Yep, it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, I had my character is a baby sheep. I'd been playing her maybe 4 or 5 months.
Well, welcome to playing the genre. But yeah, so and the big thing is each point that early on doesn't really tie together. And then what we're looking at is phase 1 is to basically reach out. Phase 2 is things start to happen, where my goal is on the phase 2 is to get Brujah more involved in the politics, to see and understand what's going on, because we actually, for a clan that's considered not an anti-clan but an actual founding clan, because they're not Brujah anti, they're Brujah in the Sabbat. Because the fact that there would be no Sabbat if it hadn't been for the Brujah revolts, and the Brujah basically being the muscle and most of the weight for the shock troops for the Sabbat to be successful.
And that's why I don't only ever call my character Brujah anti out of character, just to signal, she's Sabbat. Because in Sabbat, no, we're Brujah or we're Brutes. Actually, I think we call ourselves Brutes more than Brujah. Sabbat have really embraced that nickname.
Which is funny considering, like, when you actually read a lot of the source material, which is interesting when you get into the V20, you'll actually realize that there's actually more scholars, and it's more of the Janissary Legionnaire mentality, scholar soldier, but warriors, like, which is what you'll see a lot with, you know, the Brujah and the Anarchs, is they just want to throw hands and cause chaos. And the Camarilla, you'll see a lot more, you know, composed. They're more philosopher, like, because Musier is a perfect example. Critias, how Patrick was supposed to be, who was a passionate, you know, Catholic. Manuela, who is 100% a politician. Then he reads the stuff on Dark Selena and all them, and then you realize that on the Sabbat side, like, they are soldier first, then scholar, and then you have a few where you're like the Butcher of the Black Forest, who you're just like, why is he known as the Butcher of the Black Forest? And then you find out he's actually a dude who, he was a barbarian who held off the like century of Romans with like him and a small band, and literally stood there and butchered them, and then got embraced, was because the Ventru started sending people, and the Brujah were like, no, go have fun. Like, yeah. It's little things like that, right? Like,
so when I started playing, I'd played in the org way back in like 2001 ish in college, and then sort of fell away from it for over a decade, and then came back and like, I want to play Sabbat. I've never played Sabbat. I love the idea of Sabbat. So I sat down and was like, I also have never played a Brujah. I really want to. It's a clan I would always want to play. So I sat down, like, reading through the books, is like, okay, I got a great idea for this. Because they are supposed to be warrior scholars. So it's like, all right, former police detective. She will absolutely throw down. But yeah, she wants to investigate and figure things out and learn things.
Oh, yeah. And what's nice about it is in the clan book and somewhat in V20, they talk about like the different types. Like, you have your different bloodlines, but you also have the different ideals of the Brujah. And each one, like, outside where in what's nice is V20 kind of expanded it to make more sense, where you have more of they want to change the world in the Sabbat than anywhere else, because there are a lot of, they're supposed to be the newer, younger Brujah, because they don't like what's been going on. They want to fight the man, they want to fight the machine. And that's the entire mentality that I look at it when it comes to like a lot of the Brujah in general, is like, they should be wanting to change. Like, there should be something, like, even the dispassionate find something to keep them emotionally tied to something, to the world. That's a key critical part of the genre, is having a passion and being willing to fight for it, which is literally the fundamentals for being a Brujah.
Absolutely, which is why I enjoy playing mine so much.
Yeah. So the big thing that I think will shock people is right now, because one of the things that happened before Brian Capron, who was the 2018 to 2020, and then, you know, Brujah coordinator, who I took over for.
He came in right as I started playing.
Is before him was that the Santos Brujah were supposed to be a bloodline, because they're mentioned in a few books. Well, they're basically people that follow the Santos and stuff, and they're Wongators. So basically they have Serpent of the Light magic, which is faith-based, right? It's all about, now when Wonga makes up, when you actually read a lot of the stuff, it's made up of like 21 different religions. And all those religions are either Afro-Caribbean Catholic or basically ancestral and spirit worship, which is drastically different from Duron Key, which is the other common faith-based magic you'll see. But the key component of it was is it got codified in the Sedite packet as a Brujah court approval and Sedite court approval in their Sedite genre packet as a bloodline of Wongators. So the big thing we're looking at is having and this is the big thing that we're working on right now before we go any further. It will be either Camarilla or Sabbat only for it. There will be no Anarch Santos. Like, that is a key point of clear delineation of the separation.
I mean, just giving my opinion, there's already a lot of Wongators in the Sabbat.
It's where it belongs, like, yeah. You know, but it's the fact that they talk about a lot of the Brujah are, you know, Catholic, come from the southern coast of the US and Spain and stuff like that, and how it's in Central and South America, and the Santos cults and everything like that start as a bloodline. So like it's a really interesting dynamic, especially with the fact that it's Brujah only.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting once that starts rolling. My Brujah will have an interesting reaction as a Brujah with no faith.
Well, I mean, and it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, no faith yet almost punched Baron Samedi in the face.
I mean, hey, there's a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's addressing some stuff that has been in character across all three genres, is stuff that hasn't really been touched on or has been forgotten about and never really done. Because one of the biggest issues we have with the Brujah office is the fact that most of the stuff that's happened, and this isn't just in the Brujah office, is when there's a change in Justicar or a change in like NPC, where who's no longer being a predominant NPC, a lot of players just walk away and don't interact with it. So we're seeing a shift, and they want to do more with this. So how do we do that and explain this? How can we use this NPC as a mechanism for story? So it's going to be really cool to see how this all works out. And the big goal that we're looking at is basically a lot of the Brujah players, outside of a small handful, don't actually know the history of One World by Night Brujah genre, or a lot of the history of the past when the books, which explains a lot of the different bloodlines and everything else. So it's going to be really cool to see.
I know Taki is a relatively newer player to One World by Night because it's been about 4.5 years. I don't know a lot of the org history. I know the book history because I've read the books, because I want to justify having my 3 dots of the Brujah lore, but I don't necessarily know all the org history unless someone fills me in on it. And also, like, I don't know how to get in touch with a lot of the NPCs. That's something that's also been a problem, is how do we even go about getting involved with the NPCs?
The easiest way to get involved with the NPCs is to, one, you can reach out to your appropriate genre core, sect court. So Camarilla, Anarch, or Sabbat. And if they don't control the NPC, they'll just, forward it to me. Because of actually, like, most of the princes for the Brujah on the Camarilla side, I actually don't control. I control a very small number of NPCs. Luckily, I work, Mike's been very much of, well, your genre. Do you mind running, you can go and run it. Just, keep me CC'd and tell me, what your mentality when you look at it and everything is, which is why a good example is how everything with Dr. Alexander Musier, the NPC for the Harridan stuff, has been a lot of, stuff reading on him, understanding, the philosophy of how and why, being in the military and being over in the Middle East between, AFRICOM mission, 2 tours to Iraq, 1 to Kuwait, 1 to Afghanistan, being in Israel for 9 months, and stuff like that. It's really interesting because, like, I love history, I love culture, and it gives you, when you have that and you learn and understand that aspect of the cultures and their history and the reasons why a lot of that happens, it gives you more depth to be able to understand the answers of it, right, and how to interact with them.
Do you have anything else as coordinator you would like to touch on?
Realistically, STs, do not be afraid to reach out to my office. I have no problem with doing an email and going, hey, we want to run some Blue Hot Block. We don't really have any ideas. We want to do something for our players. Is there anything we could do? I have no problem with having that conversation with staffs and basically using that as a way to, give them their Brujah players or their game something that is unique to them. Because the big thing we have to remember is, as coordinators, we're a resource. Our job is to be not just a subject matter expert, but be a tool that the staffs can use and that the players can interact with. Like, that's the reason why it's not a one-man job. There's a reason why we need subcourts who can help and do everything. And I'm really blessed to have, Emily, Sue, and my staff, who are all over the US and South America, who are really big on, being involved. So it's going to be really good.
Fantastic. So now I get to ask the really fun question, which is, who do you currently play?
So in Vampire, I have my active characters are it's an Anarch named Craig LeBlanc. He is a former follower of Set. I left the followers of Set in character. He is an Anarch Einharder Setite. And no, he bluntly says he is not sorry, and it's pronounced Einherjar because Paul will choke me, and he is not a follower of Set. Funny story about that, which is how I met Stacy and them, is I was at the 2014-2015 midwinter when it was in Milwaukee. I got summoned. So I'm a member of Mayhem. We were hired to work. This is when it was Atlantic City, and we were hired to work security with the Black Hand, and because it was the first time they were sitting down to do like, yo, like there's this thing we're dealing with Infernalist. How do we want to address this moving forward? And I got summoned to the follower set meeting. So I pulled out my cell phone and started it was like early smartphones where you could have Skype and stuff on there. So I Skype called every member in character of the security team and recorded playing on my phone like this as every player went and gave their name, where they're from, their temple, what their actual real name was, what their rank was in their cult, what cult they belonged to. And I just went like this, and everyone's like, what are you doing? So the ST came up and goes, hey Marcus, he goes like, hey Marcus, are you playing on your phone in character, or are you just fucking around out of here? I was like, oh no, I'm on my phone in character, and I'm just acting like I'm playing like something on my phone. And everyone goes like this, so I'd slide over and I would show them that I was playing basically Snake and like poker on my phone, and I'd go back to recording it and no one questioned it. And then I told the ST what I was doing. So I got like everyone. So everyone is seeing this that's a part of the security, and as are the STs. And they're just like, oh my God, Mark is what? They're like, Craig, oh my God, where are you? I was like, I got summoned. So here's their information. And this is when the Setites were trying to rob the auction, so that way the Giovanni were hoping they didn't have to run it. So it was a hilarious thing. So what happened is I actually had a recorder and basically said, fuck you guys, I'm no longer a follower of Set. I can't believe you would fucking summon me to this after I publicly, for the last like 5-6 months, have intentionally not killed anyone that you guys have sent after me. I've sent them back to Egypt in a to whom it may concern, staked box. Like, this is ridiculous. And I said, I'm the Odin worshipping motherfucking Anarch Setite. Get off my, and I'll leave it at that. So I walked out and everyone's like, summon. So Stacy, who was portraying the NPC at the time, was like, I want him back. I need to talk to him. And everyone's like, summon. And I like ST was like, I was like, I think my life's in danger. I ain't going back. So I went back to the big gathering. So they sent this. So somebody who had just converted an NPC Nosferatu mentor. And so what happened was, and she said, hey, go get him. I need to talk to him, grab him, and I need to talk to him. So the ST whose game it was portraying it. It was like, oh, well, he physically grabbed me. So it was a auto end of rounds. I get daisy chained to the opposite side of the room as all the security killed this Nosferatu NPC. So yeah, I've been playing Craig since 2013. I love it. Mayhem, it's been great. It's been rough. There's been a lot of ups and downs. It's been really good. And basically a few of the members who stepped away are coming back and playing their characters. So it's been really cool interacting and getting them caught up on the history of our gang over the last like 6 years where they haven't been playing. I play Matthias O'Grady of Clan Venture in the Camarilla, getting him back active. I play Dan the Man Ham, aka Dapper Dan of Clan Nosferatu in the Camarilla, but he's been shelved in Springfield. He's basically whenever I can make it to Illinois and visit, I'll play him. I played a Brujah who I basically walked away from because I joined and said, I haven't really done anything, so we're going to go ahead and just get rid of him. And then on the Sabbat side, I've been playing on and off since the early 2000s, like 2004, John Thundercrow, aka Thundercrow TC, my Sabbat Gangrel, who's a cult underground relic hunter. And I played Bicyclave, who became a BSD and then went Ronin, and then died on the Guru side. And then I play Chiron, aka Speaks for Those Forgotten, a Wendigo, and I play Andros Gress, a Shadow Lord.
So many. I'm always impressed by people who can have that many PCs. I have one that I currently play actively and like 4 that are shelved because I can't focus on more than one at a time.
No, I get it. And each one has their own distinct personality and how they handle things, so it's cool. It's great.
Yeah, and obviously from what I've been saying during the interview, the one I've been playing is my Brujah, which is why I loved getting to interview you, because you're my cord.
Well, I mean, like I said, like me and my team were really easy to talk to. Just reach out at Team Brujah at Google Groups or brewcord at Gmail.
All right, and I think that just about wraps it up for the interview. So I want to thank you again for being here.
Sheryl, thanks for having me.
One Interview by Night is hosted by Sheryl Westleigh. Contact and interview prep by Ariel. Editing and music by Christian Keller. If you are interested in playing in One World by Night, please visit our website at OWbN.net. You can contact the marketing team at OWbN-marketing@googlegroups.com. One Interview by Night is presented by One World by Night, produced under the Dark Pack Agreement with Paradox Interactive. Portions of the presented material are the copyrights and trademarks of Paradox Interactive AB and are used with permission. All rights reserved. For more information, please visit worldofdarkness.com. This material is not official World of Darkness material and is intended solely for use by One World by Night.